I'm Alex. The night before my wedding, I found out that my girlfriend of 5 years had been crazy with her first love modi all night. I sat in a dim room, the light from my phone screen blinding me. A message popped up, and the picture was so clear it was sickening. My girlfriend Ruby and her first love were hugging each other, laughing wantonly. Looking at this, I was angry at first, then sneered, and my heart gradually calmed down, and I had made a decision in my heart. Tomorrow's wedding will be held as usual, but the bride will be replaced by someone else. I will definitely make these unfaithful couple regret it. I muttered to myself, my voice so low that it was almost inaudible. Hi everyone, I'm Jordan. Before watching the video, please take 2 seconds to like and share this video. And subscribe to the channel. This is very important to me. Thank you very much. Now enjoy the story. The next morning, I pretended that nothing had happened. The wedding took place as planned, and the wedding car team set out as scheduled, but they did not follow the scheduled route to Ruby's house. The team turned at an unfamiliar street corner and took another road. My best man and good friend Lou G just sat next to me, his brows furrowed, obviously noticing something was wrong. He asked in confusion, "Alex, this doesn't seem to be the direction to Ruby's house?" I looked out the window at the azure blue sky. Sky said calmly, "I won't marry you. I plan to let myself go." Hearing this, Lou Gija was stunned for a moment, then showed an excited expression. "It should have been done a long time ago. A woman like Ruby is not worth your love at all. When she goes out to play, she wears branded clothes and carries bags. Which one of them is not spent on your money? Alex, you treat her so well. How could she cheat on you on the eve of your wedding? It's best if you can figure it out. But since you knew Ruby cheated on you, why did you still go to get married? Who are you going to marry?" Lou Gija asked again, his eyes full of curiosity. I smiled, "And you will know who the bride is right away." At this moment, another face appeared in my mind, a bright and capable face. I couldn't help but curl the corners of my lips, with an inexplicable expectation in my heart. I used to be an old friend of the women in the first year of high school. I remember that in high school, I was beaten because I refused to help the scoundrels in the school to cheat. It was Snow who appeared in time to help me. When I said Snow's name, I felt an inexplicable warmth in my heart. In my impression, she was always cold and didn't talk much, but her eyes were always firm and deep. Coincidentally, last night I saw on her WeChat moments that she was forced to get married by her parents. I was hurt, so I took the initiative to talk to her. Unexpectedly, we hit it off so well. At this time, the motorcade slowly drove into a quiet community and finally stopped in front of a simple but elegant villa. Just as I was about to go up to marry Snow, ironically, Lou G just showed me Ruby's circle of friends. She had just posted a video of herself waiting for me in her mother's room, and the accompanying text was quite sad. "I am a coward, and I finally listened to my parents and chose the former between bread and love. Goodbye, my love." Her boyfriend Modi commented below, "Ruby, I will not give up on you. Ruby, wait for me not to marry him. I will prove my love for you to the world." I sneered. These two people thought they were the male and female protagonists in the abused article, but it was a pity that I, the male supporting role, didn't want to play with them. At this moment, Ruby's phone rang again. The ringtone was harsh and urgent. After the call was connected, her voice came through the phone line, still with that arrogant and impatient tone. "Alex, why are you so slow in picking up your bride? Do you know how long my family and I have been waiting for you? If it's less than 10 minutes, my mother said you have to give another 500,000 yuan as a betrothal gift. Otherwise, she will marry me to someone else." On the other end of the phone, she could faintly hear her friend's laughter, mixed with a few harsh ridicules. "Hasn't Alex already given your family 980,000 yuan as a betrothal gift? If I give him another 500,000 yuan, he might not be willing, right?" Ruby's best friend said. Ruby's tone was still arrogant. "Just wait and see. If I ask for an extra 500,000 yuan as a betrothal gift, he will definitely give it. After all these years, he still can't escape from my grasp." My fingers trembled slightly. I clenched the phone tightly and hung up the call, but my heart was cold, not giving Ruby a chance to explain. I sneered. Things have developed to this point. She is still so arrogant. At this moment, my phone vibrated again. It was a social media alert. In Ruby's circle of friends, Modi was arrogantly declaring that he wanted to steal the bride, as if he was the protagonist of this wedding. It was ridiculous. Modi probably didn't know that there was no bride at my wedding that he expected. He thought Ruby was forced to marry, but he didn't expect that Ruby was a greedy person who abandoned his poor first love. Soon, I adjusted my mentality, took a deep breath, and walked to Snow's door. When I pushed open the door, the scene in front of me shocked me. Snow had already put on her wedding dress and was sitting quietly by the bed. Her face was as bright as the plum blossoms in early spring, but her expression was cold as ice, without any joy. There was no bride stealing arranged by the bridesmaids in the room. She was the only one there, wearing her snow-white wedding dress. She looked up at me, slowly extended her hand, and said calmly but firmly, "Honey, let's go." Her voice was soft and cold, like a cold current that instantly passed through my heart. But at the moment she spoke, I seemed to catch a glimpse of fluctuations in her usually cold eyes, a kind of tenderness I had never seen before. I walked over, picked up the pair of exquisite high-heeled white wedding shoes on the bed, and gently put them on her. She trembled slightly, seemed a little surprised, and looked down at me. I raised my head and met her eyes, and suddenly felt a warm feeling in my heart. Snow tried to get out of bed by herself, but I stopped her. She was stunned for a moment, and a trace of nervousness flashed in her eyes. "Do you regret it?" I shook my head and smiled gently. "No, I'll carry you." After that, I squatted down and motioned her to climb on my back. She hesitated for a moment, but finally gave up struggling and gently lay on my back. I could feel her body temperature and her soft hair brushing against my neck. The long-lost intimacy made my heart beat faster. I carried Snow to the car. Ruby called again. This time, I didn't hesitate at all and calmly clicked the answer button. "Alex, what's wrong with you today? Why don't you come and pick me up?" "You coward. You're so slow to pick me up. The wedding is important to you and to me. All my relatives and friends are already at the wedding." Her voice sounded sharply on the other end of the phone, revealing a hysterical anger. Every word she said was like a sharp knife piercing my heart. If I had heard these words yesterday, I would have been in so much pain that I could hardly breathe. But when I decided to switch to Snow, I had already given up on Ruby. I acted very calmly and no longer obeyed her like before, but Ruby didn't seem to notice anything unusual about me. Ruby said with her usual coldness and impatience, "Alex, stop saying these useless things. You came late today. Give each of my besties a red envelope of 100,000 yuan, or I won't forgive you." Ruby's friends laughed and mocked from the other end of the line. "Yeah, Alex, a wedding only happens once in a lifetime. We are Ruby's best friends and her family. If you are not willing to give us a mere 100,000 yuan red envelope, how can we trust Ruby to you?" Ruby was obviously encouraged by their voices, and her tone became stronger. "Alex, don't let me down. Today is our wedding. If you let me down, I won't get married." When I heard these words, the anger in my heart was replaced by a sneer. "Okay, whatever you want, then I won't answer the phone. I don't plan to pick you up either." Ruby obviously didn't expect my cold response, and she got angry instantly. "Alex, what's your attitude? Today is our wedding day. I'm telling you, don't be so petty. And you want to show off to me? Alex, you forced me to do this. If you want to come to my house to pick me up today, kneel down and take me out. Otherwise, I won't go to this wedding." After she said this, she decisively hung up the phone, as if declaring her determination and bottom line. Snow, who was sitting next to me, couldn't help curling his lips when he heard all this, and said in a light tone, "Alex, you used to have a unique vision." I shrugged, smiled bitterly, and responded helplessly. "After all, this is the fact, and I can't refute it. When I had a car accident, it was Snow who called someone to rescue me. Gradually, we got to know each other, and I fell in love with her, so I have always been very tolerant of her. But all this is in the past. Now, I picked up my phone and sent a text message to my parents, explaining the reason for the bride change at the wedding. My parents were surprised at first, but after learning that Ruby had cheated on me the night before the wedding, they angrily supported my decision. We arrived at the wedding venue, and the music started. I walked into the hotel lobby, holding Snow's hand. Ruby was probably still waiting for me at home, imagining that I would be humble and coax her as usual. Unfortunately, this time, she would not be waiting for the wholehearted me. The me who she trampled on time and time again, but always tolerated, was gone with her betrayal. When the guests saw that the bride had been replaced, they all whispered to each other, especially Ruby's relatives. Their faces were full of confusion and puzzlement, and they quickly called Ruby. My parents were as calm as ever, smiling and asking the guests to sit down and continue the wedding. Just as we were about to exchange rings, someone suddenly broke in. "Ruby, don't marry Alex. We are true love." A familiar voice broke the tranquility of the wedding. I looked up and saw that it was Modi. He rushed to the stage with an anxious look on his face, obviously eager to express his deep love. However, when he saw that the bride standing next to me was Snow, He was completely stunned. How is this possible? Where did you hide, Ruby? No one answered my calls. Modi's voice was filled with disbelief and anger. I sneered and kicked him. Modi, the pretty boy, had no power to fight back and fell to the ground. I looked at him coldly and said bluntly, I don't want Ruby anymore. You can pick up this trash if you want. Just as I turned around to put the wedding ring on Snow, the door of the wedding hall was suddenly pushed open from the outside. Ruby, wearing a wedding dress and barefoot, ran in. The white veil on her head fell off because of running, and her hair was messy. Snow in her wedding dress beside me. She took 2 steps back in disbelief. Her eyes gradually turned red, and her voice was filled with tears. Alex, I should be the bride today. How could you marry another woman? Alex, how could this happen? I want you to give me an explanation. Her parents and brother followed closely behind. All of them were furious, with anger and confusion in their eyes. Modi, on the other hand, had a gloating expression on his face, as if he thought his chance had come. Ruby, it's great that I'm not late. You are not Alex's bride yet. Modi tried to comfort Ruby and take the opportunity to win her over. However, Ruby shook off his hand and stared at me firmly, like an infatuated woman waiting for an explanation from a heartless man like me. I think this scene is ridiculous. Ruby was the one who cheated on him on the eve of the wedding, but now she is playing the victim. I held Snow's hand tightly and said calmly, Ruby, why are you here? I thought you were immersed in the indulgence with Modi. You two had a great time last night. I thought you couldn't recover today. Ruby heard me mention the word indulgence. Her face turned pale instantly. Obviously, she realized that I already knew what she had done. No, Alex, you misunderstood. I was just catching up with him last night. Ruby stuttered as she tried to explain, but her words seemed so weak. I smiled disdainfully and interrupted her mercilessly. Ruby, you are so hypocritical. You want to be with the one you love, but you are unwilling to give up wealth and glory. You want to marry someone who can provide you with food and clothing, but you are unwilling to give up your own selfish desires. People like you are really disgusting. At this point, my voice trembled a little, and a bitter feeling welled up in my heart. After all, I loved her so much and wanted to spend my life with her so sincerely. Snow sensed my emotions and held me tightly with her other hand, giving me warmth and support. Her eyes were full of heartache and comfort, and I smiled at her, as if to say, it's okay, I've let it go. Afterwards, I asked my best man to play the surveillance video of Ruby and Modi entering and leaving the hotel room the night before, as well as her deleted circle of friends, in front of Ruby's family. There was an uproar in the hall. Ruby's relatives all looked livid. Some began to talk in low voices, and some stood aside awkwardly, not knowing what to say. One of the elders finally couldn't help it anymore and walked up to Ruby's father and said in a low but stern voice, Old Sue, your Ruby needs to be disciplined. Why is she going too far and looking for another man on the eve of the wedding? Is this the way of your family, Old Sue? Ruby's father looked grim, obviously ashamed. Yeah, this isn't a wedding invitation for us. This is an embarrassment for us. Ruby's relatives left the table one after another, and their contemptuous looks made Ruby and the Sue family feel ashamed. Alex, don't be like this. I was just confused for a moment. Give me a chance and let our wedding go on. I promise that I will never have anything to do with Modi again. Ruby hugged me with tears in her eyes, and I pushed her away coldly. It's useless. I don't love you anymore. Now you can have whatever freedom you want, and no one can hinder you anymore. Modi was afraid that I really forgave Ruby, so he kept holding Ruby. Seeing that Ruby was still crying, Snow stood in front of me. Miss Ruby, please respect yourself. Alex is my husband now. He is such a good person. Since you didn't know how to cherish him and even trampled on him at the beginning, you have no right to ask for his forgiveness here. No. Who do you think you are? Alex, and I've been dating for so long. I don't believe he doesn't love me. Ruby looked at me angrily, her eyes full of disappointment and confusion. I understand, Alex. The reason why you have become so heartless must be because of her. She pointed at Snow, her voice sharp, almost gritting her teeth, and said, It must be you. It must be you, the vixen, who seduced him. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened today. Her emotions were close to collapse. She immediately turned to Modi standing beside her, tears welling up in her eyes. Modi, hurry up and explain to Alex that there is nothing between us. Please, Modi, explain it quickly. I must marry Alex. Ruby cried heartbreakingly and held Modi's hand, as if she had grabbed the last straw. Modi looked embarrassed and he obviously understood that no matter how much he explained at this moment, it would be useless. Should he say that they just chatted under the quilt that night in the hotel? At this moment, Ruby's mother, who had been standing silently by the side, finally couldn't stand it anymore and slapped her hard. Ruby, how long are you going to embarrass me as a mother? At this time, everyone in the room looked at Ruby's parents. They were so angry that their faces turned blue. They pointed at Ruby with trembling hands. You shameless thing. You were with another man on the eve of the wedding, and now you want to throw dirty water on us? You really brought shame to our family. I couldn't help but sneer and interrupted their quarrel. Ruby, speak more clearly. What a vixen. I chose to marry Snow. A woman like you wants to be my wife. It's wishful thinking. Ruby was hurt by my words, her face full of anger and disbelief. Alex, how could you do this to me? You loved me so much before, but now you have changed your mind because of this woman? Her voice was trembling, and her eyes were full of disappointment. The past scenes emerged in my mind. Once she said she wanted to eat lobster. I ran all over the city at 3 or 4 in the middle of the night. But when I bought the lobster back exhausted, she threw it to the dog with disdain, not paying any attention to it. Thinking of this, I couldn't stand it anymore and signaled the security guard to kick Ruby out. Take her away, and don't let her disturb my wedding with Snow again. Ruby struggled desperately and refused to leave. My father finally couldn't bear it anymore. He walked up quickly, grabbed Ruby's hair, and shouted angrily. Who do you think you are, Ruby? If you hadn't saved my son's life, I wouldn't want a daughter-in-law like you. For the sake of my son, I used to treat you as our future daughter-in-law, but you actually fooled around with your first love on the eve of the wedding? What do you think of our family? And what do you think of my son? And now you shamelessly come to disrupt my son's wedding. My mother was so angry that she lost her gentlemanly manners and slapped Ruby several times. Ruby covered her face with tears and said in a trembling voice, Dad, Mom, I'm sorry, I really didn't mean it. Modi and I didn't do anything that night. I just wanted to see him again before the wedding, and then I would never see him again after I married Alex. As she spoke, she looked at Modi while crying, as if she wanted him to testify for her. Modi was also a little flustered, and just as he was about to speak, my mother interrupted her angrily. Me? Do you think we are stupid? Don't call me Mom. You are not qualified to be our daughter-in-law. In the end, Ruby was forcibly dragged away by her family, but Snow and I's wedding was not affected at all and went on smoothly. In the evening, after the guests left, I returned to the bridal chamber and saw Snow sitting quietly on the bed waiting for me. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, and she looked particularly attractive under the light, probably because she drank some red wine when she toasted just now. Thank you for today, I said sincerely. Snow smiled and replied softly, Don't thank me. I should be the one thanking you. Now that I'm married to you, my parents don't have to urge me to get married anymore. I'm actually afraid that my parents will let me marry someone I hate. The next day, Ruby still didn't give up. She found the wedding room I had prepared for her. When she opened the door and saw me, the joy in her eyes instantly turned into disappointment and anger. Her eyes fell on Snow, who was dressed fashionably behind me, and her voice choked with sobs. Alex, isn't this our new home? How could you bring her to our home? Ruby in front of me, feeling extremely annoyed. Ruby, there is no relationship between us anymore. My legal wife now is Snow. Please respect yourself. I held Snow's hand and raised the big wedding ring on our ring finger. Ruby turned pale and suddenly pushed me away as if she lost control. She ran into the house, crying, and saw that all the furniture we had arranged together in the house had been replaced. She couldn't stop her tears from flowing. No, Alex, this is our home. How can you let another woman live here? She cried until she was hoarse, tears falling to the ground. Tell Snow to get out. She is not a good person. I knew she had bad intentions towards you. I was completely infuriated by her unreasonable behavior and said coldly, That's enough, Ruby. You cheated first. What's the point of saying this now? We're over. Ruby shook her head and looked at me with tearful eyes, with a hint of madness. I don't accept it, Alex. I know you are still angry with me. You married Snow just to get my attention, right? Please stop making trouble. I know I was wrong. Snow stood aside and sneered. Alex, sometimes I really admire you. Where did you find such a scumbag ex-girlfriend? You are so shameless and want to cheat on 2 women at the same time, but you still pretend to be a victim. She walked forward, looked directly at Ruby, and said bluntly, Ruby, I'll tell you one last time, Alex is my husband now. Stay away from him in the future. Otherwise, I will call the police immediately and have them take you away. I'm a reporter. I don't mind you being the front page news tomorrow." After saying that, Snow rolled up her sleeves without hesitation, dragged Ruby, who was still crying, out, and threw her out the door. Looking at her series of actions, I was a little stunned. I didn't expect that Snow, who seemed calm at ordinary times, also had such a fierce side. Snow closed the door, looked back at me, blushed, and said a little embarrassedly, "I'm sorry. I was too angry just now and lost control." I smiled and said softly, "It's okay, Snow. I think this side of you is cute, too." Hearing what I said, Snow seemed a little shy. "You must be hungry. I'll go to the kitchen to cook." Ruby was still banging on the door like a crazy person out of control. I picked up my phone helplessly and called the property management to ask the security guard to drive her away. In the evening, I received a text message from Ruby. "Alex, since you were so cruel to me, I will marry Modi. Alex, I will make you regret it for the rest of your life." I couldn't help laughing when I saw her text message. This woman is so mean and stupid. Does she think I still care about what happened between her and Modi? She never understood that no matter how big the mistake was, she would put the blame on others and think she was innocent. Thinking of this, I suddenly felt sick. On the third day after our wedding, Snow and I went to visit her parents. Both of Snow's parents are professors at prestigious universities. Before meeting them, although I knew this was a cooperative marriage, I was still a little nervous. Unexpectedly, Snow's parents were very friendly to me. They welcomed me with a big smile. "Xiao Yi, you know that Snow is our only child. I also know that you have never gotten along and don't have a stable feeling. But now that you two have chosen to get married, we are relieved to hand her over to you. You don't know that Snow has been talking about you a lot before." Snow heard this. She interrupted hurriedly. "Mom, stop talking." When she looked at me, she lowered her head in panic, not daring to look me in the eye. "Dad, Mom, even though Snow and I don't have much time together, I know she's a very good girl. Now that I'm married to her, I will definitely treat her well. My parents like her very much, too, so you can rest assured. I know that I must give a guarantee so that Snow's parents will be at ease with our future together." Although my marriage to Snow was based on cooperation considerations, I still followed the rules of normal marriage and gave the betrothal gift of 660,000 yuan to her parents. 660,000 yuan means everything will go well. Although her parents refused, they finally kept the betrothal gift after my persuasion. They said the money would be saved for us. This weekend, Snow and I went to the jewelry store and reselected our wedding rings. When I picked up a diamond ring worth $200,000 and handed it to Snow, she saw the price of the ring and waved her hands to refuse. "Alex, is this ring too expensive? Otherwise, I won't buy it and don't waste the money. I think a diamond ring is not necessary. An ordinary ring will also be fine." "No, this ring is so beautiful. It's perfect for my wife. And you are my wife now. Isn't the purpose of a husband making money to spend on his wife?" My words made Snow laugh, and at this moment, a familiar voice came from the other side of the counter. Snow and I turned our heads at the same time and saw Ruby wearing a diamond ring that was much smaller than the one in Snow's hand. Modi, who was standing next to her, looked anxious and complained unhappily. "Ruby, this ring is too expensive. It costs 60,000 yuan. This store is simply robbing us." Hearing this, the clerk on the side frowned and said unhappily, "Sir, please be careful with your words. Our products are clearly marked with prices, and there is no false price. The gentleman next to you is happy to buy a 200,000 yuan ring for his wife, but you are bargaining over a 60,000 yuan ring and even accusing us of robbing you." There was a hint of disdain in the clerk's voice. He shifted his eyes to Snow and me. He was obviously envious of our wealth and hoped that I would be his customer. This sentence immediately made Ruby and Modi pay attention to me. Their eyes stopped at the big diamond ring on Snow's hand. Ruby's eyes suddenly turned red and tears fell. "Alex, don't go too far." I was slightly stunned. When I heard Ruby's words, I just felt that her reaction was inexplicable. I bought a ring for Snow and didn't even tell Ruby a word. Why did she think I was targeting her? "You did it on purpose." Ruby stared at me with resentment, her voice full of accusations. "You knew Modi couldn't afford an expensive ring, so you deliberately bought Snow such an expensive one, just to humiliate me, right?" Hearing this, I couldn't help laughing, looking at her with contempt in my eyes. "Ruby, you are too narcissistic. What does it have to do with you if I buy a ring for my wife?" After that, I calmly took out my black card and handed it to the clerk, indicating that I should check out. The clerk nodded quickly, looking very happy. Ruby stared at the big diamond ring on Snow's hand, her eyes full of jealousy and resentment, but she turned to me with a hint of despair. Alex, are you really going to do this to me? If you do this, I will never forgive you. I held Snow's hand and looked at her with disdain. So what? What does it have to do with me? Ruby bit her lips so hard that blood oozed from them. As if out of spite, she forced Modi to buy the 20,000 ring. Ruby, don't be so willful. This ring is too expensive. My mother said that her wedding hardware and rings are all kept, and they still maintain their value. This ring is just a piece of stone. What's so good about it? Modi advised in a low voice with an unpleasant look on his face. Ruby was enraged by his words and felt humiliated. Modi, that's enough. You keep saying you love me, but you can't even afford to buy me a ring. I think you should just ask your mother to marry you. Modi angrily, as if she wanted to vent all her grievances and dissatisfaction. Modi's face suddenly turned ugly, and he swallowed his words. His mother had said long ago that since Ruby had caused such a scandal, it was a great blessing for him to marry her. What else did he want? What do you want in terms of gifts and weddings? It's really a fantasy. In the evening, I took Snow back home for dinner. My parents were very satisfied with Snow as their daughter-in-law and kept praising me for my good taste. Snow sat next to me and was amused by them so much that she drank a few more glasses of wine. On the way home, I carried Snow on my back. She rested her head on my shoulder and said in a drunken voice, Alex, do you know what I am? I paused as I carried her on my back, not understanding why she suddenly asked this question. What are you? I'm a coward. Snow smiled bitterly. Cowards don't deserve love. Why do you say that? I was a little confused, but I felt a sense of nervousness and anticipation in my heart. Because I like you, Alex. I've liked you for a long, long time. I didn't dare to confess. I'm a coward. Her voice became softer and softer, as if she was speaking to herself, or as if she was speaking the truth after drinking. My heart suddenly trembled, and I felt a kind of emotion I had never felt before when I heard her confession. Snow, do you like me? Snow nodded, tears falling from the corners of her eyes. Yes, I like you. I have always liked you, but I always felt that I was not good enough. You have been excellent since you were in school, and your family is also rich. I thought that you would only like outstanding girls like Ruby. A complex emotion surged in my heart, with a hint of pity and a hint of regret. I looked at her and whispered, Snow, I actually noticed you a long time ago. You were so special. It's just that we missed each other later, but now. In the bedroom, Snow was drunk and confused, but still held my hand tightly. Alex, you know what? You are the most difficult problem I have ever encountered in my life. I have studied it for a long time and tried many methods, but I just can't find a way to stop loving you. Her tears were falling drop by drop. I looked at her and felt an urge to protect her. I leaned over and gently kissed away the tears from her eyes. Then, the emotions between Snow and I exploded. We kissed from the living room to the bedroom. The affection between us was extremely passionate at this moment. The next morning, when I woke up, Snow was no longer in bed. I hurriedly got dressed and went downstairs, where I found that she had already prepared breakfast and was busy in the kitchen. I hurried over to help her set the table. Why don't you sleep a little longer? I asked her gently. I'm used to getting up early. Snow had a hint of shyness on her face, as if she was still embarrassed about what happened last night. I held her hand and said sincerely, Snow, you deserve it. What's it worth? Snow looked at me in confusion. I leaned close to her and whispered in her ear, You are worthy of my love. Her cheeks instantly turned red, and a hint of shyness flashed in her eyes. I smiled and kissed her lips gently, feeling her warmth, and a feeling of happiness I had never felt before surged in my heart. However, we cannot enjoy this sense of happiness calmly. Ruby has been pestering me since I got married to Snow. Although the farce at the wedding has passed, she obviously has not let it go, but has become more persistent. She appeared in front of me more than once, with a painful expression and hysterical tone, trying to get me to come back to her. Initial reunion request. That day, I was busy in a meeting at the company, discussing the progress of a new project with several department heads. Suddenly, my assistant knocked on the door hurriedly, looking a little panicked. CEO, there's a lady outside. She said she must see you, and she is very sad. The assistant said cautiously. I frowned, feeling a little unhappy. Didn't I say I was in a meeting? Can't we talk about it later? The assistant looked a little embarrassed and whispered, She is your ex-girlfriend, Ruby. She has been waiting in the lobby for more than an hour and refused to leave. When I heard Ruby's name, I suddenly felt a headache. This woman really had reached the point where she would do anything to achieve her goal. I took a deep breath, calmed myself down, and signaled my assistant to take her to my office to wait. After the meeting, I walked into the office and saw Ruby sitting on the sofa, looking a little haggard. When she saw me, she immediately stood up with a glimmer of joy in her eyes. "Alex, I knew you would see me." I looked at her coldly. "Ruby, what do you want to do? We have no relationship anymore." Her face darkened instantly. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Alex, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that on the eve of the wedding, but I really know it was wrong. I beg you to give me another chance. Let's start over, okay?" "Start over?" I couldn't help but sneer. "Do you think that's possible? You betrayed me on the eve of the wedding, and now you expect me to forgive you? Do you think that's fair?" Ruby's tears welled up in her eyes. She fell to her knees and begged, "Alex, I really know I was wrong. We have been together for so many years. Can't you give me another chance?" I sighed and said in a cold voice, "Ruby, it's over between you and me a long time ago. Your constant entanglement will only make us more miserable. Please respect yourself and leave here." Ruby wanted to say something, but I impatiently pressed the intercom on the table. "Security, send this lady out." 2 security guards came in quickly and carried Ruby out. She struggled desperately, shouting my name, but I didn't look back. Midnight call. Since then, Ruby seemed to be quiet for a few days. I thought she had finally given up, but unexpectedly, things were just beginning. One night, Snow and I were resting at home. She was pregnant, and I didn't want her to be upset, so I kept Ruby's entanglement a secret. But that night, my cell phone suddenly rang, breaking the silence of the living room. I picked up the phone and saw that it was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated for a moment and picked up the call. "Alex, it's me, Ruby." Hearing her voice, my brows furrowed even more. "Ruby, what else do you want to do?" From the other end of the phone came her low, sobbing voice. "Alex, I really can't let you go. I know I did something wrong, but I really want to see you again, please. We're over now. If you keep pestering me, it will only make people feel disgusted." I said bluntly, "Please, can you just see me? I'm downstairs at your house. Please come out and see me." Her voice was pleading, and she was almost about to cry. I took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in my heart. "Ruby, please stop doing this. I won't see you, and please don't disturb me in Snow's life anymore." After that, I decisively hung up the phone and blacklisted the number. Snow glanced at me and seemed to notice something was wrong with me, but she didn't ask. She just gently held my hand. I felt warm in my heart and couldn't help but hold her hand tightly. Snow has always understood and supported me. Her gentleness made me feel extremely happy. I even felt a little sorry for her. After marrying me, Ruby still did not disappear from her life. Uneasy following. One day, I got home from work and was about to enter the house when I suddenly noticed a familiar figure not far away. Ruby was standing behind a tree, secretly looking at me. I pretended not to see her and walked into the building. But I was getting more and more uneasy. This was not a solution. I knew Ruby was a persistent person, but her persistence had turned into madness. After returning home, I said to Snow, "Snow, I think there is something I should tell you." Snow put down the book in his hand and looked up at me. "What's the matter?" I sighed and told her about Ruby. Snow was silent for a moment, then held my hand. "Alex, let's move to a place where she can't find us. I think this is a very good idea. I have had this idea for a long time. After all, the new house we live in now was chosen by Ruby and I, and even decorated in the style Ruby likes. This is unfair to Snow, so we decided to move to a villa area that my parents bought before so that we can be closer to my parents, and they can also help me take good care of my pregnant wife." Unexpected ending. The next morning, I decided to solve the problem once and for all. I hired a private investigator and told him to investigate Ruby's situation and to stop her from harassing me at all costs. The detective soon brought me the news. It turned out that Ruby's mental state had been unstable. Since what happened at the wedding, she had been in a very low mood and had attempted suicide several times. Her parents had no choice but to let her be like this. I felt a mixture of sympathy for her, but also endless annoyance. I knew Ruby needed help, but there was nothing I could do. A few days later, I was processing documents at the company when I suddenly received a call. It was Ruby's mother on the other end of the phone, and her voice was filled with deep fatigue. "Alex, this is Ruby's mother. Something happened to Ryan in our family. She was found to have attempted suicide and is now in the hospital for emergency treatment." My heart sank. "How is she now?" The doctor said her condition is not optimistic. I know you have no relationship with her anymore, but can you come and see her?" Ruby's mother pleaded in her voice. I was silent for a moment and finally agreed. In the hospital, I saw Ruby lying on the bed. She was pale and skinny, with her eyes closed and a look of pain still on the corners of her mouth. I stood by the bed, looking at her, with mixed feelings in my heart. I didn't know what to say to her. I could only silently wish her well and hope she would get better. Suddenly, Ruby's eyes opened slightly, and she saw me. A light flashed in her eyes, and she spoke weakly. "Alex, don't talk and have a good rest." I whispered. Her tears slowly flowed down. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pestered you like this. I just... I held her hand gently and said softly, "I know. Let the past be the past. You have to live well." Ruby closed her eyes, tears falling from her eyes. At that moment, I seemed to see her regret and despair. I turned and walked out of the ward, feeling mixed emotions. Perhaps it was time for all this entanglement to end. Then I handed Ruby's parents a psychiatrist's business card. I felt that Ruby needed good psychological treatment. Perhaps only in this way could she find a new beginning. After returning home, I said to Snow, "Snow, Ruby is in the hospital. She is not doing well." Snow nodded and gently held my hand. I felt a burst of warmth and hugged her tightly. Perhaps the storms and ups and downs in life will eventually pass, and the happiness that truly belongs to us is on the way. I am very lucky to have met Snow and run this happy and peaceful home with her. Her intelligence, talent, gentleness, and thoughtfulness have filled our family life with joy. Not long after, my wife gave birth to a lovely daughter. With the birth of my daughter, our life is getting better and better. I often hold my wife and daughter tightly in my arms, feeling the warmth and peace of mind. As time went by, our family of 3 lived a simple and happy life. Our daughter grew up and became smart, bringing us endless joy. But Ruby's ending didn't seem good. 3 years later, my company went public and the business was growing. At a press conference, I met Ruby again. She was standing in the audience, wearing a seductive dress. With her outstanding appearance, she could be spotted in the crowd at a glance. However, she seemed to be much calmer now. I didn't say hello to her, but I heard from an acquaintance that Ruby had found a rich man again. However, her new life was not satisfactory and she had not given birth. So her new husband and family were very indifferent to her. Not only did they have several mistresses outside, but they even had several illegitimate children. Ruby wanted to intervene, but she was met with cold eyes and scolding from her husband and in-laws. Modi also had an unclear relationship with the wealthy Ruby. It was said that after Modi and Ruby broke up, his life became worse and worse. He had high expectations but poor skills and did not know how to run a business. He invested all his family's savings in the company, but ended up being cheated out of everything. Later, it was Ruby who helped him avoid debt. Just as I was in a daze, I saw Snow rushing towards me in the distance, holding her daughter in her arms, and she looked at me with concern. I hugged them tightly in my arms, feeling the warmth and peace of mind.